my friend.
Oh, hello, Julie.
Oh boy, it just feels so good to have some sound to sort of continue with the long exhale that I think we're both experiencing today on the 20th of January, 2021, a day we've been looking forward to for a long time.
A long exhale and the ability to do a deep, deep inhale
Absolutely.
feels really nice.
Uh,
Well, it's the 20th, a day marked for so many reasons, but also the first day we've been together for Poetry and Sound this year. Um, so I've been in a rabbit hole for
Good.
a couple weeks. So I don't know if you or if any of our listeners know that I have a thing for pathways. Um, and I love collecting photos of pathways. I love being on pathways. And I love the idea of life as a pathway. And my word that was gifted to me for 2021 is journey. So I've been sitting with this idea of journey and pathways, and I'm doing this uh, 3 Sundays with the poet David Whyte. And so a few weeks ago, he just kind of threw out this line of a poem that caught my attention and casually mentioned who it was. So I've spent a couple weeks on this rabbit hole. And so what has come up is 3 poems about pathways and journeys. And in addition to that, I did a training seminar with the Jung Center about the soul's journey and this reminder that there's no beginning, middle, or end to soul's journey, that we're always on this pathway, this journey of the soul. Um, so the line that sparked my attention was there's a path that goes all the way. There's a path that goes all the way. So that line took me on this search for, first I had to find the path. And so all I knew was this one line, and I knew it was a reference to a poet by the name of Cold Mountain, and that it was translated by Gary Snyder.
Okay.
So those are the 3 nuggets that I had to go on. So this was interesting. There is a poet whose name translates into Cold Mountain, and Cold Mountain is also the name of a place. And so the name, the Chinese name is Han Shan, which means cold mountain. And here's kind of an explanation that cold mountain is not simply a place. In the poetry, it's a metaphor for both a state of being and a spiritual destination. The reader is not simply looking at a person, you are looking at a mirror. So I just found this lovely, that it is a state of being and a spiritual destination. So then it got me thinking, who is Han Shan, and how did he come to have the name Cold Mountain? So in this poem, I think in a lot of his work, he's telling us to look within. And his poems were important in literature, in Buddhism. So it was a form of Buddhism called Chan Buddhism, which later migrated to become Zen in Japan.
Okay.
Okay. So here's a little bit, and I think what I know about this poet, is the tip of my
Mhm.
pinky fingernail. So I'm no way an expert, but I can share what I have learned. So his original name has been lost in the ages between us. He has been dated to a wide range of years in the Tang Dynasty between about 577 and 901 CE, which I'm not quite sure what the time period of CE is in
Current era.
current era. Okay, thank you. He's also been identified as different individuals during that period, as well as a collective of poets. But the legend that goes with him is that he traveled and wrote with a companion. Although some people suggest that they were the same person, no one really knows for sure. All we know is that he wrote his poems on rocks and maybe on bamboo and the wood or the walls of houses. And so further reading suggests that he was a monk and that he lived in a place that during that time was known as Cold Mountain. That the monks during that time took the name of the place. Their last name was the name of the place where they lived.
Okay. Huh.
And in some modern meaning our lifetime, there are some kind of caricatures of him and a sidekick where he's kind of a skinny, what we used to call a vagabond kind of guy, and his sidekick was kind of a pudgy guy who carried their, a stick and a knapsack and carried their stuff around. But I'm going to stick with, this idea of a monk poet, and maybe he had a sidekick. In my mind, the sidekick would be someone who might have helped him with his meals or that sort of thing. So, but then there's this poem, Cold Mountain. There is a path that goes all the way. So I'm going to read two English translations of this poem. And then I'm going to continue with my pathway theme and journey theme and read The Traveler, Your Footprints poem by Antonio Machado. And I'm going to round this journey theme with Santiago by David Whyte.
Wow. This is just making this day better and better.
The first translation is by author Arthur Wally, who was a professor of literature. He may have even been a professor of Chinese literature in the 50s. And then following him, there is the version from Gary Snyder, which is who David Whyte quoted. And his seems to be the more prominent translation of Cold Mountain's whole range of 300 poems. So a little bit about Gary Snyder, which was in the 50s. He came to Japan to translate the poems of the Tang poet Han Shan, meaning Cold Mountain. Gary Snyder dropped out of graduate school in Indiana and enrolled at UC Berkeley to study Oriental languages. So a little bit of what Gary Snyder shares is he went back to work in a graduate seminar at a time when there were only two students in this graduate seminar, himself and a Chinese person or a Chinese man. He asked what I would like to do. And he said that he would like to do some Buddhist poems that possibly were a vernacular. And his graduate sponsor told him, of course, Han Shan is the poet you should work with. So this was in like the mid to late 50s, and Gary Snyder was considered a beat poet at the time. And so I think what I can gather is Arthur Wally was a formal translator of poetry. And along comes Gary Snyder, who wants to translate some Buddhist poetry. And so this is where his graduate supervisor led him to the poems of Cold Mountain. So, and I included them both because one was formal and one isn't. And there are some similarities and there are some differences to the poem of how they feel when they're read.
Right. Would you like me to do a little ring you in?
Sure.
Okay. Just kind of get yourself comfy.
Cold Mountain, translated by Arthur Wally. I make my way up the cold mountain path. The way up seems never to end. The valley so long and the ground so stony, the stream so broad and the brush so tangled and thick. The moss is slippery, rain or no rain. The pine trees sing even when no wind blows. Who can bring himself to transcend the bonds of the world and sit with me among the white clouds? And Gary Snyder's translation: clambering up the cold mountain path, the cold mountain trail goes on and on. The long gorge choked with scree and boulders, the wide creek, the mist-blurred grass. The moss is slippery, though there's been no rain. The pine sings, but there's no wind. Who can leap the world's ties and sit with me among the white clouds?
Well, Susan, I think it needs a third round.
Let's do a third round.
Of version.
Clambering up the cold mountain path, the cold mountain trail goes on and on. The long gorge choked with scree and boulders, the wide creek, the mist-blurred grass, the moss is slippery, though there's been no rain. The pine sings, but there's no wind. Who can leap the world's ties and sit with me among the clouds? Traveler, your footprints are the only road, nothing else. Traveler, there is no road. You make your own path as you walk. As you walk, you make your own road. And when you look back and you see the path, you will travel never again. Traveler, there is no road, only a ship's wake on the sea. The road seen, then not seen. The hillside hiding, then revealing the way you should take. The road dropping away from you as if leaving you to walk on thin air, then catching you, holding you up when you thought you would fall. And the way forward, always in the end, the way that you followed. The way that carried you into your future, that brought you to this place, no matter that it sometimes took your promise from you, no matter that it had to break your heart along the way. The sense of having walked from far inside yourself into the revelation, to have risked yourself for something that seemed to stand both inside you and far away from you. that called you back in the end to the only road you could follow, walking as you did in your rags of love and speaking in the voice that night became a prayer for safe arrival, so that one day you realized that what you wanted had already happened and long ago, and in the dwelling place in which you had lived in before you began, and that every step along the way you had carried the heart and the mind and the promise that first set you off and then drew you on, and that you were more marvelous in your simple wish to find a way than the gilded roofs of any destination you could reach, as if all along you had thought the end point might be a city with golden domes and cheering crowds, and turning the corner at what you thought was the end of the road, you found just a simple reflection and a clear revelation beneath the face looking back, and beneath it another invitation, all in one glimpse. What you found what you found was just a simple reflection and a clear revelation beneath the face looking back, and beneath it another invitation, all in one glimpse, like a person or a place you had sought forever, like a broad field of freedom that beckoned you beyond, like another life, and the road still stretching on. Traveler, your footprints are the only road, nothing else. Traveler, there is no road. You make your own path as you walk. And as you walk, you make your own road. And when you look back, you see the path you will never travel again. Traveler, there is no road, only a ship's wake on the sea.
Well, first off, I love this theme of pathways and following a path that goes back from the original poet to six something BC or current era,
Mm-hmm.
100 something current era. And then we have David Whyte, who probably wrote his poem within the last, would you say 10 years?
Mm-hmm.
Within the last 10 years. And the fact that this idea of the road less traveled, of following a pathway, well, the pathway, where will it lead us, and what's at the
Mm-hmm.
end of the road, is there an end of the road, all of that is like a big universal theme that just has us all hooked in an interesting way of wanting to explore that, following our path, you know.
Right.
What does that mean to follow your path?
Follow your path.
And is the path you follow today the same path tomorrow?
You know, it's like that. You never dip your toe in the same river twice. You know, that path is never the same because you're different.
Yeah.
And so I walk paths over and over again, and there's always something new and different on that path. And Julie, this one of the things I've discovered, especially in the last several years, is there is no beginning, middle, or end. And, I was thinking 4 years ago, on this day, 4 years ago, you and I were in Sedona. Of course, you were living there, and I was there for my intensive with our meditation program. And I'm pretty sure back then I thought, this is the ending of my path of I'm at my intensive, I finished it. And little did I know, it starts all over again. Like there is no ending. In the last 4 years, I was reflecting on where I was 4 years ago, not just where I was geographically, but where I was with relationships with others, relationship with myself, um, and the paths that I had taken in just these last 4 years. And there is no beginning, middle, or end. There's only deeper, deeper, deeper. It's like you go deeper, deeper into the woods, and you go deeper, deeper into yourself and into your soul. And I could walk the same path every day and continue to have these deepening experiences.
It's sort of interesting to consider how many ancient cultures recognize that by the work in labyrinths and
Mm-hmm.
sacred wheels, the wheels of life, the Native American wheels, all these different, there's this deep intuitive saying too from the ancient kind of wisdom keepers. I'm not sure where this line comes from, but the longest journey you'll ever travel is from your head to your heart.
Hmm.
Sort of that same idea, and the concept of you can't step in the same river twice. You're not the same person when you dare to explore
Right.
and seek out, seek outside of yourself something that has been stirred from within, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
I love that concept too of the journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the line from the Cold Mountain Trail goes on and on. And, Antonio Machado's line, there is no road, you make your own path as you walk. And as you walk, you make your own road. And when you look back, you see the path. You will never travel that path again.
And even if you follow in someone else's footsteps, you
Mm-hmm.
still have your journey, which is never going to be their journey, even by walking the same path.
Right.
So that's
Right.
just beautiful imagery.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, just thinking about, Cold Mountain and what was this mountain road like, the trees, the rough terrain, maybe there were rocks. And then Machado, every time I read this Machado poem, I imagine walking through kind of wheat fields, and you're kind of pushing the wheat down, but you'll never find that path again because the wheat comes back up again. Um, and when I read David Whyte's, I imagine the El Camino Trail, and you enter these towns, and people are greeting you along the way, and then all of a sudden you're at the end. I haven't walked this, but this is what I've heard from others. All of a sudden you're at the end, and that's it. There's no big fanfare or anything.
I was waiting to cheer you on. You know what is so funny that you talked about that is I have a woman that I follow on Facebook who talks about walking that trail. And the first time she did this trip, it was a one of those blow your mind symbolic things happened to her, all along the way. Meeting the person she met just when she needed, losing something only to discover it was only weighing her down. Like all
Mm-hmm.
these beautiful sort of things happened. So flash forward, she gets the opportunity about 8 years later to do the trip again. And she wished she'd never done the trip again because in her mind, it was so fabulous. And the second time, the magic, I guess, that she was hoping to get, like, it didn't happen because you can't have the same trip again. So that's a really interesting example that I thought,
Yeah.
yeah, like, I've thought about that so many times. I had a magical journey to the Isle of Iona many years ago
Mm.
that was a life-changing experience. And I've often thought, would I taint it somehow by going back? And I think I would have to go back under the terms of not having any expectation, just
Right.
seeing what is ahead for me.
Right.
But
Right.
yeah, the journey, what's at the end of this long road?
Mm. As Robert Earl Keen likes to say, the road goes on forever. And the party never ends, according to Robert Earl Keen, but the road goes on forever. Um, and these detours, one of the things that we were talking about in this Jung training of the journey of the soul is that you can be in multiple places along the journey at the same time. There's not this set point A, point B, point C, you know, at different points in your life, you're at different places. And so there's no way to say, okay, and now I'm going to put all my ducks in a row and start. You're already in the middle of it by the time you think about it. But that we could be having multiple deepening experiences at the same time. It's not, okay, have one experience, move on to the next experience, move on to the, they're all happening at the
It's
same time.
I wonder where in humanity we sort of got the concept of journeys being linear.
Right.
It'd be really interesting to kind of understand a little bit more about that.
Mm-hmm.
Beginning humans, I guess it's our humanness. We like the idea of a beginning, a middle, and an end. Like maybe that's something to do with it. But definitely, as I've gotten older, I've recognized my journeys tend to be more like a spiral, and I meet myself again and again,
Yeah.
especially if it's something you think you healed or you think it's like, maybe not yet.
Yep.
One more
And
chance.
sometimes we're spiraling up and sometimes we're spiraling down.
Yeah.
But it's this human condition where we have to label things,
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
which for me takes me out of embodying the journey when you label beginning or, oh, look, here's a pathway to take. Oh, let me go to the right or to the left. This labeling that us humans do, it removes us from the full experience and embodying the journey. So, mm, yes. So
Wow.
my year of journey, my word is journey. And I don't think it's all about these physical journeys that I'll be embarking on once we can take physical journeys again. There
Mhm.
are internal
So
journeys.
my word here ended up being more of it's two words actually, because my word is begin again.
Oh,
And it sort of covers a multitude of things, but basically it's about when you just feel like it's not going the way you want it to go, begin again.
begin again.
Begin again. Yeah. So
I
it's
really like, have so much appreciation for this that you can begin again. There isn't one beginning. You
yeah.
can begin, you can reset, recalibrate.
So that is the intention I'm holding in this 2021 energy beginning.
Well, today was a big day of beginning again.
Yeah, very fitting.
Well, Julie, thanks for joining me on this day.
Oh, it was lovely. I was going to share just a little bit of, I just, you and I have been very anticipating and excited about our young who is the youngest poet laureate of the United States, Amanda Gorman, who just delighted probably the world. Certainly her country is incredibly proud of this beautiful artist that she is. And she wrote and read her beautiful poem, "The Hill We Climb,"
Mm-hmm.
for the inauguration today of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And, just one of the things that I love that I wanted to share, because up until, she had been working on this poem, and then January 6th happened,
Mm-hmm.
where an attack on our capital changed the game in our country for a lot of reasons. And she pivoted thinking, well, this is going to have to be acknowledged in this reading, this poem I'm going to share. And so this is the section she wrote to kind of update the poem that she had prepared for the
Okay.
inauguration reading today. So I'm just going to read this brief section because I'm just enthralled. She's just a very talented young woman. And she writes, "We've seen a force that would shatter our nation rather than share it, would destroy our country if it meant delaying democracy. And this effort nearly succeeded. But while democracy can be periodically delayed, it can never be permanently defeated. In this truth, in this faith, we trust.
Mm.
For while we have our eyes on the future, history has its eyes on us."
Mm.
And the entire poem, if anybody has not seen her perform this or read this, you need to go find "The Hill We Climb" by Amanda Gorman to get the benefit of the full, beautiful tribute to this country.
She just was a shining light.
She really is.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for bringing that to us, Julie. And yes, please, I know I'll be watching it again. So for those of you who haven't seen it, we really encourage you to do so.
My friend, this has been delightful. So good to see you. Good to get caught up again.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing today.
No, you're welcome. I'm so glad you were here today. Okay, until next time.
All right, next time.
Okay.